Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I am Janine Windishausen, Placer County Treasurer Tax Collector. I've held that office since 1993 as an elected office, and I'm also the Program Administrator and Implementer for Placer County. We are the only program operating in Placer County, including our incorporated cities. We started our program, started planning for our program in 2009, and we launched it in 2010. We were looking for a way to invest in Main Street. 2009 was the downturn in the economy. We were looking for ways to help property owners reduce utility costs by leveraging their local tax dollars back into the economy, to provide ways for businesses seeking to comply with AB 32 to have financing that would help them with that, and to improve the environment. When the program was established by the Board of Supervisors and before it was launched, the board made consumer protection a cornerstone of the program. The board required that we establish a seminar, an informational seminar that all property owners would be required to attend before we would process their application, before we would begin processing their application. In that, I have a copy of that presentation. It's probably 80 slides, something like that. But in that presentation, we tell property owners that they should consider all types of financing. We mention equity lines and other types of financing, and that they should make sure that PACE financing is right for them. We provide them information in selecting a contractor, such as checking references, resources for finding a contractor, such as contractors associations, information on contacting the state contractors license board so that they can see any record that might be there, in addition to the checking that and verification that we do. We provide them information on our application process from approval through funding, how the program works, and we include statements related to FHFA. We have always included statements in our presentation regarding the FHFA situation, in addition to written disclosures. Most recently, since I'll speak a little bit more about this in a moment, but since we saw a difference in lender response late last summer, early fall, we have changed that disclosure. We also provide them information on a term we borrowed originally from Sonoma, reduce before you produce, talking about making that energy efficiency investment first, because the return on investment is greater before you produce with renewable generation. So we talk about that as well. One of the things that we do not do in terms of consumer protection is we do not give contractors information about the available equity that is in the home. We want our contractors' bids turned in based on the work that's to be provided, not the amount of funding that might be available. Our program, as I mentioned, is administered by the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office, where we have experience in local government finance, municipal land-based financing, municipal bonds, and property taxation. I might mention that the basis for PACE programs, we are the only operator of both an SB 555 program and an AB 811 program. Both of those programs are based on law that has been in place in California with that lien priority for decades. In the case of the AB 811, those laws have been on the books since 1911, giving that lien status for assessment districts, and since the mid-'80s in the case of SB 555 under the Melrose platform. So that lien status is not new. It is simply being used in a different way. Instead of broad public purpose like sewers and streets for improvements on individual properties, based on a public benefit finding in AB 811 indicating that the environment and climate benefits from these types of financings and therefore merit municipal financing. We believe that the legislature intended the environmental benefits derived from PACE financing to be utilized to benefit the California environment. That's one of the reasons that we maintain our program the way we do in Placer County. As far as I know, all programs, there may be an exception, but including our programs, when the property owner signs their contract, they assign any environmental benefits associated with that financing to our program. On an individual basis, those, if someone puts in a solar system, for example, that benefit in terms of a carbon credit or a renewable energy credit doesn't really have a value. But when it is aggregated through a program such as ours, it can provide environmental benefit in terms of offsets. However, California has not recognized that benefit, and therefore we have not been able to monetize it. However, these benefits, there are markets on the East Coast where these benefits are monetized and they can be sold. So that's one of the tenets of our program, is to maintain those benefits locally for the benefit of the California environment. About 2 years ago, the Placer County Board of Supervisors took action to affirm PACE financing to be exclusively provided by the county to ensure consumer protection and that the economic and environmental benefits from PACE financing accrued back to local jurisdictions. We do offer our program to other jurisdictions through a shared services model. We don't make any profit per se. We are based on cost recovery to ensure that other taxpayers aren't subsidizing the program who are not beneficiaries of the program. Since how our program has changed, again, we launched our program in March of 2010. We suspended the program after the FHFA, on the residential side, after the FHFA announcements in July of 2010, but then we resumed the program again in July of 2013 on the residential side. Throughout that time, we have always had a non-residential program.
Wrap up if you can.
Okay. Like Sonoma, our application process is very much the same. We independently verify the consumer information, such as property tax payments, et cetera. I can tell you that I think the word is out that we verify that, because initially we do have individuals who had bankruptcies and wanted to see if we could catch that. We currently are waiving our application fee of $500 on the residential for any property owner who is making $1,500 or more in water conservation measures along with it. On average, our cost of financing is about 1.6%. Our staff is always available to the property owner throughout the process and after closing. They know that they can always call their specialist if they have any issues. All of our contractors are required to participate in training, and we always verify their current licensing, bonding, and insurance status every time an application is submitted. So it's not a one-time process. The way that I will wrap up by saying that the way that we changed our disclosures last fall, is that prior to last fall, our experience was that in only 9% of refinancings where our PACE financing existed, was our lien paid off. Only 9% of the time. We don't know whether that was due to consumer debt consolidation or other choices of the consumer or lender required. And in the case of real estate transactions, only 31% of the time could have been subject to negotiation as well. But in the fall, we saw a dramatic change, and so our disclosures, we changed, instead of a lender may require it, that is highly likely that a lender will require this to be paid off, subject to new financing. And that is the disclosure that we are now making to consumers so that they can anticipate that.
Okay. Thank you. Please try to keep it to 5 minutes if you can.
Certainly. Thank you, chair members, committee members. I'm Barbara Spoonauer, Director of Energy and Environmental Programs at Western Riverside Council of Governments, and we are the administrator to the WRCOG HERO and California HERO program. WRCOG is a joint powers authority that represents the 17 cities and the western portion of Riverside County unincorporated area on regional issues. Our purpose is to unify Western Riverside so that it can speak with a collaborative voice on important issues that affect its members. Recognizing that many issues related to growth that are not constrained by political boundaries, WRCOG focuses on a number of regional matters important to our future. By working together through its committee structure and utilizing resources, WRCOG is cost effective by reducing duplication of efforts, sharing information, enabling strong advocacy, and strengthening Western Riverside's standing in the region and in the state. Today, WRCOG's program areas are varied and include transportation, environment, energy, economy, and health. Western Riverside County continues to be one of the fastest growing counties in the United States, with 1.7 million residents. Forecasts project the population to be 2.1 million by 2020 and 2.7 million by 2035. With the amount of people heading our way, we need to look for ways to conserve our energy and water resources. And the HERO program does that for us. In 2009, WRCOG began working to develop the HERO program. Western Riverside County was hit hard by the economic recession, and we saw that one of our main workforce, the contracting community, dwindle. AB 811 has, for us, was a job creator / retainer and a way to bring back economic benefits to our subregion, with co-benefits of helping our member jurisdictions meet California climate goals. We also saw that developing a regional program gave us economies of scale, having one program versus 18 individual programs, a consistent messaging and marketing, consistent program design and implementation, and the ability to leverage funding. And we've seen great successes in our program because of this. After 2 years of development and millions of dollars in resources from our private partners, which include Public Financial Management, PFM as our financial advisor, David Taussig and Associates as our assessment administrator, Best and Krieger as our bond counsel, Deutsche Bank as our trustee, and Renovate America as our residential funding partner. We have completed over 19,000 projects in our subregion for over $371 million. This equates to an economic stimulus of over $643 million being put back into our community and creating over 3,000 jobs. It also reduces over 756,000 tons of greenhouse gases and over 832 million gallons of water annually. Because of its success, we received calls from other jurisdictions asking how they could duplicate our program. We, in turn, looked at creating a program that was turnkey that would alleviate other jurisdictions from needing to spend the time and resources in developing their own programs. In 2013, our executive committee gave staff direction to implement the California HERO program. In order to join our program, a jurisdiction must adopt a resolution of participation, and it signs on to WRCOG as an associate member. Once that is complete, WRCOG does go through a judicial validation process with the courts to ensure that we are following the laws of AB 811. Today we have over 338 jurisdictions that are associate members to WRCOG. With that, we've completed over 28,000 projects for over $617 million, and again have provided over 5,000 jobs and $1.07 billion in economic stimulus, with 1.9 billion gallons of water savings annually. WRCOG continues to ensure that our provider, Renovate America, has the necessary resources in place to remain in contact with the jurisdictions that are outside of our member jurisdiction, since we are located in Riverside and we have communities that are in Northern California. So we ensure that they have the resources that are able to communicate with those jurisdictions. WRCOG also communicates with these members to provide them with updates on anything that we are doing with our program. We have continued to undertake efforts to make improvements to our program and ensure that it's a responsible program and that it looks out for the consumers. I'm sure the committee members can appreciate when a new program rolls out, it doesn't roll out in the perfect order that everyone thinks it does. We have taken an active role in working with Renovate America to review, sign applications. We review project costs, ask questions. We record the liens. We sign the bond documents. We answer questions from the consumers. We answer contractor questions. And we do our due diligence and follow up. We also listen to our community. We listen to our local real estate associations, our consumers, our contractors. With our leadership, we have worked with our real estate association to enhance and clarify our disclosures regarding FHFA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac requirements, stating that property owners, when they go to sell and or refinance, may need to pay that assessment off at time of closing. While our lawyers love the legal language and the jargon that goes along with it, the real estate community really felt simple language was much more appreciated, and the consumer signing off beside those disclosures was very important. In 2014, we removed any type of prepayment penalty associated with our assessments that went prior and future. We have also reduced our fees and interest rates over the term of our program. In December of 2015, our executive committee also adopted and put into writing the consumer protections policies, which we've always followed and strengthened throughout our time. What I do in closing, I want to say the HERO program is a vital part of our subregion, ensuring that we do have the resources to accommodate our future growth. And this is a program that we're very proud of. And in the fact that we actually provide a forum where property owners who have had issues with contractors are able to come to and get an answer. Those who finance with their credit cards or a home equity line of credit are not able to call your B of A, your credit card company, to say, hey, the HVAC that my contractor put in 2 months ago is no longer working, or I felt I got overcharged. I don't think those will call you back. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair Eggman and Chair DeBonne. My name is James Hamill. I'm a Managing Director with the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. We are a statewide joint powers authority founded in 1988 by the League of California Cities and the California State Association of Counties. We have over 526 members throughout the state, varying from almost every city, almost every county, and a lot of special districts. We've been on the roller coaster ride of PACE since 2008 at the very beginning. And at that time, we were approached by a number of cities and counties who wanted to participate in a PACE program, have it for their local community, but did not have the infrastructure or the staff to do so. So at that time, our board took action to issue a competitive solicitation for providers for this, and then awarded that contract to Renew Financial at that time. After 2008, as mentioned previously, in 2010, the board took action to suspend the program when FHFA took their action, and did not restart the program until 2013, when CAFTA put in their loan loss reserve fund and those other parameters were put in place. The board the CSCD board recognizing that creating a competitive landscape made sense, in 2014 created what we call the Open PACE program, where now we have 5 providers of PACE programs or PACE administrators on a statewide basis, creating a competitive platform for PACE under our program. Stepping over to protections, one of the things that CSCD has been proud of over the last 28 years is being accountable to its members, to its cities and its counties. And that's the one thing that we pride ourselves on, is that a city or a county always has the opportunity to remove themselves either from this program or from the JPA if they are not happy with what's going on in their community. So they do opt in, and they have the opportunity to opt out. And one thing that we have seen over time is that there have been some concerns that have come up, and we have addressed those concerns, very similar to what Jane was saying. And we go back to the administrators and work with them directly to make sure that those are handled and that everyone is happy in the end. last December, very similar to what Barbara outlined, our board adopted the consumer protection policies that are very strong, that have always been enforced, and that we are looking to further enhance. It's one thing that we want to make sure that from a consumer side that everyone is protected out there. We also appointed a ad hoc committee of 3 members of our board who have oversight over the PACE program and review it on an ongoing basis, work with the administrators to make sure they are doing the right things. In addition, we do very similar to what Barbara outlined. We sign the documents every week, have weekly calls, and really have follow-up with all those administrators that we have. With that, I can close on the fact that one of the things that we are looking at is the version 2 of those consumer protection policies is really putting in place the audit provisions that are required under that. This is an evolving industry, has been mentioned today. We are looking to put in the version 2 where there is the audit and the recourse that's necessary to not only protect the consumers, but protect the underlying cities and counties who are offering this to their end consumers. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Merswa?
Thank you, Chairs Eggman, DeBobney, and Joint Committee members. Dan Mearswa, Yuba County Treasurer Tax Collector, immediate past president of California Association of County Treasurers and Tax Collectors, also a committee member of CSCDA. I'm here representing more than just the County of Yuba. I'm here to represent and speak to the 56 other counties in the state, as well as hundreds of cities which do and listen to PACE programs. What I was here to talk about is really the involvement of the tax collector's perspective in that implementation. The question comes, what involvement a tax collector has in selecting or enlisting into the process, and that varies, as you would suspect, across the state, but the bulk of the answer is no involvement. It does involve some counties that did involve the tax collector into a committee process to review and discuss what possibilities will come up to issue. So the bulk of the tax collectors really see this first and foremost on a tax bill. So the first time they see it is when we're sending that bill out to your constituents. That's the first notice we have. That's the first notice that we're going to be able to give and provide to our common constituents. So in regards to the actual charges of the tax bills, the tax collectors can definitively say that they're very tremendous from each other. They can vary from $1,000 a year to the upwards of $12,000 a year, depending clearly on what systems they enroll, what loans, what the term is of the loan, and then the very value of the property itself, because there are contingencies as far as a floor and a ceiling. So we can't definitively say without seeing a contract, which we don't, what is the cause of that tax increase. But that leads me to my next point, is that is the main complaint that a tax collector sees from the taxpayers and our constituents is, why did my taxes go up? Oftentimes they have an impound account and they see a letter from their lender that says you need to put in another $100, $200, sometimes $400 a month in your taxes. So that's the point where the tax collector or the tax collector's staff needs to intercede and then find out what that discrepancy is for that tax collector to try and answer their question. At that point, we isolate the variables between the previous tax year and the current tax year. Most notably, when a PACE lien is involved, it is the PACE lien that is the outstanding item. At which point the tax bill will have the phone number of the PACE administrator, if it's not internal in the case of the 56 other counties, and turn over the taxpayer to that number to assist them further. As far as any other piece, really the biggest thing that the tax collectors were unanimous in saying to me and represent to you is our ability to accept anything other than the full amount is not something that is currently legal. We must collect the full amount of that tax bill, the PACE lien, school bonds, ad valorem, and the 1% altogether. So that's been the biggest issue that a tax collector faces with your constituents, is letting them know that we have no flexibility currently over revenue and taxation code to provide any assuance if they are going to default on that loan.
Okay. Do you, not to your knowledge, there's in any of the counties that have this in existence, there's no communication between the tax collector and the program?
Between the program itself, when it started up, the administrators, I myself can speak to the County of Yuba. Yes, the administrators came and spoke to me as part of a committee in preparation for this committee, and over the years with CSCDA and my involvement there, most of my peers have communicated the exact opposite experience. So my own personal experience differs than many of my peers when they're not administering as a county program.
All right. That sounds like you think the tax collector should know a little bit before time.
I think it would be helpful to our constituents just so they can help relay some information, but without the contract there in and of itself on each individual basis, the best thing we can do is defer them back to that administrator so they can answer that question. We don't have the legal expertise to do so, but it would be helpful so we can prepare our staff to answer those questions.
Spooner?
I'd just like to say WRCOG, as it's setting up to get onto the tax roll, we do reach out to our county tax collectors and auditor controller office and provide them with a copy of what the assessment contract looks like and the backup documentation to get the assessment put onto the tax roll for that specific jurisdiction. And a lot of times, I know, especially in my county, our tax collector actually have my personal number right beside because they send everybody to me, which we're happy to take those calls.
Okay. All right. Ms. Brown.
Do those improvements send more, let me say it, with the improvements, then the tax actually goes up on the properties?
Because of the loan.
Right.
Correct. So the improvements, we're not privy to what the improvement is in the non-Sonoma or Placer model. So in the 56 other counties, we're only privy to a charge placed on the bill in an amount that typically can be around $5,000 a year. So that's broken into the 2 installments of the $2,500. That's what they see on their tax bill. So they had a tax bill previously, say, of $2,500. It doubled, and that's probably the most typical tax bill we're going to see. So they had signed on to something and agreed to it, but when it's time they receive that bill, they walk into our office or call, they're showing us, here's our tax bill. It went from $2,500 to $5,000, correct?
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Because that's how the loan's paid.
That, I know, but
Okay, yep.
most of that is interest, or is that the loan itself? A lot of it is interest?
The tax? Your property tax, you mean?
The property tax, is a lot of that the interest that's paid? How's the interest paid? Because they said it has to be, it's up to 10%.
Yeah, the bulk of that, and I'm going to defer over to my 2 colleagues that administer the program myself, but from my experience, the bulk of that, in the example you gave earlier of the $20,000 solar system that was placed, or photovoltaic, the bulk of that is going to be the principal of the loan. Now, depending on the terms, the years of that could change the amount. There will be a component of capitalized interest, which is essentially financing that until your first payment is made. Because it's a property tax bill, you can pay that either all in full in October, or you can pay that in 2 installments, both in December and April. But otherwise, the bulk of it is principal, yes.
Mr. Linder, you had a question?
Yeah, we talked earlier with the last panel about this 10% cap on I guess administration fees. What's the average cost per property financed or per financing do your respective counties charge?
In Placer, it averages about 1.6, 1.7%.
And I'll speak for the 56 that aren't here. As far as admin fees, I think the typical is not really exceeding much more than 2%. The tax collector receives no funding for their part in the billing or collections activity. So we're not entirely privy, but as far as my experience, I haven't heard of anyone speak really more than 2%.
And then
that's
go ahead.
well. Excuse me. I wanted to clarify. So that is the application or processing fee portion. The rate on of interest on the lien itself is 6% in Placer.
Okay, and then I have a question. This is more directed towards the WRCOG. How much of the WRCOG's budget comes from the administration of these these hero programs?
What percentage of WRCOG's overall budget?
Well, how much of the WRCOG's budget comes from the administration of hero loans?
You mean the overall county budget?
I'm trying to. Our current budget that we're operating under right now, we have a $6 million gross revenue budget, and out of that, we pay our financial advisor and cover our overhead costs, and then whatever is the unallocated funds is then directed back to our local jurisdiction so that they can implement energy efficiency, water conservation, sustainable projects that they want to implement on their own.
Well, just follow it, but okay, so your budget's $6. You said you have a $6 million budget. How much of that revenue coming in comes from the administration? Or basically, what cut is your budget coming from these programs?
That is the $6 million is what we receive for the HERO program.
Okay.
We receive.
And how much of that? But what's your total overall budget?
Our total agency overall budget is probably about $300 million.
And where do you get the rest of that revenue from?
We operate the Transportation Uniform Mitigation Fee, which is the developmental fee program to ensure that developers are paying their share for the roads. And then we have a number of other programs.
The follow-up question I'd have, taking that $6 million, obviously, and very legitimate, and it's obviously going to a greater good and a lot of opportunities for people to get these programs, which we applaud. Do you still feel, though, that you can fairly regulate these programs and serve in that capacity when a percentage of your budget is based on the fact that you are making revenue off these programs for, obviously, the existence of your COG? And on top of that, when they sell the bonds, don't you also get a percentage of that?
No.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
We receive, our program charges 4.99% cost of issuance. Out of that, WRCOG receives 1%, and then we pay our public financial manager out of that. So at the end of the day, we're under 1% for each assessment that has gone through. The reason the number is so high is because of the number of assessments that we
Not sure if
administer.
necessarily high or not. Seems like you have a good handle on that. I will say, I'd like to put this to Placer County. I will say, if every consumer in our state, if every individual looking to do these energy upgrades had the same opportunity and protections that were in place in Placer County, we would not be having this hearing today. I will say I applaud you for your exemplary consumer-driven, really, this is to me what should be the standard, what we're achieving. And I think when the legislation was passed, this is what was envisioned. And when you look at the news stories we've seen recently of some of the bad actors, where you have a number of issues in the chain between getting to a point where we have a consumer having the ability to take out this program and get the energy efficiencies, save money, and be a good steward of our environment. And you get to the beginning point of this and you see all the unfortunate lack of consumer protections in place that allows a rogue contractor to oversell or overpromise or misstate the program. When you look at the situation we saw recently on a number of newscasts in Southern California where a family thought they were engaged in a government agency and they did it because they thought they were going to have new fees or taxes that were going to be assessed to them regardless if they didn't do it. You know, so I applaud you for those efforts, but I just would love to get your expertise, and anyone else can join in as well, on the previous speaker. I don't know if you weren't here, I don't want to put you on the spot or weren't able to listen to him, but what he did say obviously opens up a lot of concerns and questions for our housing market. So my questions would be, what is the solution to the FHFA announcements regarding GSEs? And then also, how are you prepared as someone that obviously has great intentions and has implemented a number of consumer protections but still has this issue with the liens? How are you preparing for the unfortunate but somewhat cyclical downturn in our economy that could lead to another housing crisis, where then when you see people taking out equity in their house, and now you have where someone thought they had $200,000 in equity, and I applaud your decision not to share that information ahead of time to contractors. Now all of a sudden they maybe only have $50,000 in equity, but they had a $60,000 lien. What are the steps and what are you guys doing as administrators to make sure that you're prepared if you do have that kind of housing bubble?